Hello YouTube, part 3 of the Hagakure. We're going to receive more of the wisdom of samurai today. And it starts right away. If a bad habit has become ingrained over many years, it cannot be remediated easily. In terms of fitness and changing your life, this is going to take many aspects. First off, if you or someone you know wants to get into the lifestyle, they want to become healthy, they want to start working out, they will not be able to do so right away. They're not going to be able to immediately be completely efficient. It takes time for everyone. Why? Because you need to build up the discipline. And discipline is built up through many ways. It's going to be built up through habits. When you repeat something again and again, eventually it enters your natural schedule and you just do it, which is absolutely necessary for natural bodybuilding. You cannot rely on motivation. Motivation is fleeting, it's like a flame. You need to be able to do it, training, diet, every day, without the impulse, without feeling pumped. It's just what you do now. That takes time to develop. Once it's developed, usually it's for life, but it does take sometimes years to build. And you also are going to get some nice perks from your body. Your body is going to reward you with endorphins. You're going to feel much better. Your body is going to feel healthier. All of these are rewards that are going to help you build that discipline, but they don't happen immediately. It takes some time for you to get used to it and start asking for more and more. And then there's another aspect. There is the fact that, as he says, it's a bad habit, right? And I've always found that, sadly for humans, it's very easy to build bad habits. Unlike good habits, bad habits can be created within a weekend, but they're very hard to destroy. Why? Because for the most part, what we call bad habits are things that also produce endorphins. They also make us feel good, but they take no effort. Opening a bag of chips and stuffing your face is going to make you feel good in the moment. It takes no effort. Many other things, or the things that you could consider to be vices, the fruits of laziness or perversion, are going to make you feel good, and they're going to not take any discipline at all because you don't need to build up to anything to do them. They are the exact opposite of good habits that take a lot of time. In my language, we have a saying that le naturel revient au galop, meaning that the things that you have a tendency to do are going to come back the second you open the door again for them. That's when you have to be able to be strong enough to reject these things while building the good things. And because it takes many years, you also need to have the patience for yourself and others to take your time. It's personally why I'm not a personal coach. I've tried to coach people, but I'm not patient enough with others because I'm too hard on them. I want people to be good too fast, and that's not good. It's not doing them a service, it's not doing me a service. So if you are on your way to starting this journey, be patient with yourself, because if you're not, you're just going to burn yourself out. That's also what I wanted to say, is a lot of people, when they start doing that fitness thing, they go too fast and they burn themselves because they do too much too quick. If you jump from a diet of junk food to a diet super strict, like a bro diet, with like dried chicken and broccoli, you're going to be miserable. You're going to last 2 weeks. That's not how you get results. It's the same for your training. If you start training 3 hours a day with no previous work capacity, you're going to burn yourself out, you're going to be miserable. And it's just not how bodybuilding works, it's not how life works. It's much better to be consistent throughout a full year than just rush and be completely obsessed for only 2 weeks. Because at the end of the day, the person who stayed with it for a year outworked you 1,000 times. Remember though, how can you expect a man to become a better person just through humiliating him? This is something that shoujo, I think, directs towards teachers and towards people who are trying to lead the way, which I consider myself to be. It is very tempting when people are being wimpy and they don't want to do things to try and shake their ego and offend them by calling them weak, calling them pathetic, and to try and get a reaction out of them. I know personally when I did sports, when I was coached by people, men of the older generation. That's how they did it. Like if you fell on the field in football, no one would help you up. People would tell you that you're a wimp, and they would try to motivate you that way. I still have a tendency to do that to people. It's never well received. People don't like that. There's also the fact that all of that can seem very condescending because you are coming from a position of expertise on something. You might, for example, have studied physics for 15 years and now you're tutoring someone who's not as good as you, of course. And you're going to, in a sense, make them feel worthless because you, with all your experience, are making fun of them because they're not able to do something. It doesn't work. Leaders, people who want to pass on their knowledge, need to show compassion, they need to show empathy, they need to be patient. Even with people who don't show you the respect that you think you deserve, even with people who are resistant, are trying to oppose you, these are the people you should show the most love toward because these are the people who need the most help. Of course, if they don't want to be helped, you won't be able to, but you need to be kind enough to extend the hand and see if they're going to take it. It might take years, but once they eventually do, you're going to be able to help them. This is what a teacher should aspire to be. It is a heavenly reprimand. Simply acknowledge that you are sorely at fault and repent, otherwise you will never be able to resume service again. Here Shoujo is explaining to a samurai how he should behave when his superior made a mistake. And Shoujo is saying, well, even though you got reprimanded and you weren't at fault, you should apologize, say it was your fault, and move on. This is a way of thinking that I personally don't subscribe to, that a lot of people don't subscribe to. But it's a type of modesty and a humble trait of character that was super important in Bushido, meaning that you were not necessarily subservient, but the superiors were always in the right. And you had to make way for them to not make them lose face, because if they lost face, then the clan lost face. It's a type of deference and respect that doesn't really exist nowadays, but I found it interesting to include it, just so that you get a better idea of the mentality and culture of the Japan of Yamamoto. The prepared warrior is not only able to solve problems in a quick and commendable fashion by virtue of his life experience, but he can react appropriately through his comprehension of measures to meet any scenario. He is always ready. I've discussed that in part 2. Yamamoto discussed that, and Yamamoto is another name for Shoujo, by the way. He discusses it in the sense that a warrior should always try and foresee what's going to happen, and they should be prepared for whatever, even their own death. Here, he explains that not only are you going to be prepared because of your life experience, meaning that you're going to have practiced the thing that is going to come your way is going to be something you've already experienced, but you can react because you understand any scenario. It's a thing that Musashi in the Book of Five Rings said a lot. If you understand one thing, you understand 10,000 things. For me, it's so important for overall comprehension, and it's applicable to everything. For example, if you learn a European language, for example French, you are going to get keys of comprehension for other languages. But I've seen as a teacher that not everyone is able to use those keys. I have people who even get handicapped by those keys because they learn Spanish, and then when they learn French, instead of helping them, the language becomes a parasite that takes the place of French in their brain, and they're not able to get it. For other people like me, I make connections between languages to the point that languages that I have almost no knowledge, at least theoretical, about, I'm still able to speak and write them a little bit, just because from one thing I learned another thing. And Shoujo says that it's the same in everyday life. Your ability to comprehend a scenario is going to help you apprehend a different one because they might have similarities. The unprepared warrior lacks foresight, and even if he succeeds in solving a problem, it is merely through good fortune rather than good planning. A warrior who doesn't think things through beforehand will be ill-equipped. So Shoujo opposes a good warrior who is prepared and a bad warrior who is unprepared. And the bad warrior lacks foresight, meaning that things happen to him that he didn't see coming. And once they happen, he is left defenseless and at the mercy of the situation. Meaning that if he, by some luck, solves it, then it wasn't really him who solved it. It wasn't his spirit or his body. It was just fate. And that's something that you don't want to happen. Because most of the time in those situations, you're going to lose. You're going to mess up. But it's sad to say that even if it doesn't happen, it wasn't because of you. You just got lucky. At least that's what Shoujo is saying. You need to think things through beforehand. Things that you planned and things that you didn't plan, of course. You can't just schedule things that you, of your own will, are going to try and make happen and just leave the rest be. You need to be prepared. Of course, that is also a mentality that could lead to a bunch of anxiety for some people, but also understand that there are realistic scenarios that are going to happen in your life. Be prepared for these. Don't worry too much about things that happen once in a million, because it's a waste of energy. All right. Oh, there's another one here, but after that there's one that is very politically incorrect. But before that, when I asked Yasaburo to brush a character, I emphasized the importance of determination. Write each character without fear of tearing through the paper with your brush. The merits of the character can be decided by a calligraphy expert. Do not be discouraged just because it does not go well. So here, when he says brush a character, it means calligraphy. And he explains to the aforementioned Yasaburo that when you do the calligraphy, you cannot be timid. You need to actually apply strength to the drawing. And for people who actually tried this, the risk is that if you're too slow, the ink is going to penetrate the paper so much that it's going to tear. And in a sense, you might think, okay, I need to be slow then and be very delicate. But no, because when you do that, you leave more time for the ink to penetrate the paper. So you need, as Shoujo says, you need to be determined. You need to go. You need to know what you're doing and do the movement in one strike. And you find that the best calligraphies, at least in Japanese kanji, when they're finished, you can sense the energy of the author. You can clearly see the strike of the brush. It's not rigid. There's a very strong sense of movement in that type of art. And of course, it translates in real life as well. Don't be timid with your actions. Go all the way. If you do something, it means that you were prepared for it, so just show your will, show your determination. It's the same for lifting. You can lift slow, but you need to be showing intent when you lift. And as he says, do not be discouraged just because it does not go well. If something goes wrong, don't throw a pity party, just reflect on it and try again. And now let's get onto the one that it's a topic that is going to come back a ton, and you can't really be surprised that it's there. But this is what Shoujo says. I quote, "Moreover, a woman should obey her husband as her master in the same way." He says that in relation to giving priority to your master because it will please your parents and the gods. So in the hierarchy, it's your master, so here the shogun, or the leader of the clan, the parents, and the deity. And he finishes by saying that the same thing should apply to a woman. A woman will not be able to serve a master, meaning that she's not going to be a samurai, but she should serve her husband. Okay. How can we relate that in a world where women are now the equals of men, at least in the sense that they have the freedom to do whatever they want? It's the same logic that applies to what I said about transposing the concept of master to the more global concept of following your own path. This channel is mostly for men. Why? Because it attracts mostly men. I checked the audience, there's 98% men. There's no way around that. But I don't really care what you are, to be honest. Men, women, there are certain things that are going to apply to you if you're a man because of cultural and biological factors. But I do firmly believe that everyone should be free and that you should claim your freedom. And claiming your freedom is also walking the path. If you don't walk the path, you're walking someone else's path. Just know it. If you're doing something in life, you're advancing. But if you don't know where you're going, most likely you're working for someone else or you're not working at all. And both are bad. So instead of saying that a woman or a man should obey her husband or her master, you should obey the path. And the path is you. You decide your own path. There are few who can be thought of, and here he speaks about men of his province, right? Men of the time, back in the days. This is to show you that, interestingly enough, the same complaints seem to be repeating years after years, because Shoujo says so many men now, so back in the days, seem to have the pulse of a woman. What does he mean by that? There are few who can be thought as real men. This means that one man can surpass others by making just a small effort. I can relate that to today. I need to mention also the fact that what does having the pulse of a woman means? Well, if you look at back in the days, and the state of women back in the days, what were women supposed to do? They were supposed to obey their husband, cook, take care of the house, and that was their life. Have kids. Nowadays, it's not the same anymore in many Western countries. But what is the pulse of a woman? Well, the pulse of a woman back then would be submission, meaning that they would obey the word of someone else. It's not just reserved to women. Many men were like that, as he says, and many men are like that today. And it's a certain trait of character, it's a certain vibe. I'm sure that you can tell what I'm talking about, meaning that these are people, men or women, who show a lack of character and willpower that you can sense when you talk to them, where you know that if you wanted, or if you acted on some portion of domination, these people would not stand in your way, meaning that they would choose the easy way out. They would surrender. You're also going to meet men and women who are going to give you the different type of vibe, where you're going to feel like you're facing a warrior. You're facing someone who's going to defend themselves. And for many people, most people are not predators, so we don't act on that information, but predators do. That's why those people always target the weak. I used to, when I was a kid, I got in trouble all the time because I was targeted by these people because they could sense my weakness. When I started working out and I found my way, it stopped. Even though I lived in a place that was quite dangerous and you could get mugged very easily, it never happened again. Even though I was taking much more risks, I wasn't as cautious as I used to be, and because of that, I was much safer, ironically enough. And he explains here that this very fact, the fact that so many people have that weak pulse, means that you can be top 1% easy. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. If you live in a world where everyone is weak, no one is taking care of themselves, no one is lifting, then yeah, it's sad because you see the state of the world and it makes you feel like it's all going to hell. But at the end of the day, it also means that you can be the best easily, because because everyone is here, you just need to be here to be much better than them. If everyone was here, you would need to be here. If you lived in a super alpha society where everyone was a Chad, this is the standard. You would need to go above that standard. It would be so hard. But nowadays, lift, take good care of yourself, show that you respect yourself, and you're already going to be above the rest. He continues, and he says that because he says that one man can surpass others by making a small effort, and that's 100% true. Nowadays, however, such acts are condemned as foolish and matters are resolved with a clever tongue, while difficult work is avoided altogether. This is a matter that young warriors should chew over thoroughly. He is here speaking about what he calls matanuki. And matanuki is described as an act of violence, basically. And it has apparently a scarification aspect to it, but most experts agree on the fact that it was supposed to be a show of manliness. Personally, I don't think that the description of what this matanuki thing is super manly, but he says that to explain the fact that having scars was manly, and that no samurai was completely scarless. Because a man's work was bloody, that's what he says. But nowadays, those acts are condemned as foolish, which I agree, in a sense. In my opinion, if you're a warrior, like if you're a fighter, but you don't have any broken bones or scars, shows to me that if you've been fighting all this time, you're a pretty good fighter, right? You don't need to self-inflict damage to show your worth. Scars are earned, right? If you have a scar, you have a story to go to that scar. If the story is, oh, I cut myself, either you're mentally unstable, and in that case, it's sad for you because you're cutting, which is not a good thing to do, or something happened to you, you defended yourself, and now you have a scar, right? Every scar on my body I have a story with them. Some of them are stupid, some of them are pretty cool. He continues, however, and says that the matters are nowadays resolved with a clever tongue, while difficult work is avoided. This is something I relate to. I do think that we've made a ton of progress in terms of not allowing violence to resolve everything. That's great. The fact that we are not just kicking each other in the face over a small disagreement, and that society is, for the vast majority, very civil nowadays, especially in certain countries, is great. But I also think that this civility is hiding a lot of aggressivity that would be much better off being expressed. Because in a lot of cases, this transforms into frustration, and those people that should have expressed that aggressivity instead of just holding it in, let it explode in one big act of violence that is usually quite severe and grave and grim. Because we as a society has made violence so taboo that we pretend like it doesn't exist. But it's still going to be there, it's always going to be there. Humans are violent by nature. I do think that if we were allowed to express that, for example, if physical activities were more promoted in schools and we didn't just have the kids play volleyball for an hour a week, which is way too little activity for young men and women, we would be much better off because it would teach people how to control their emotion. A lot of people don't control their emotion. And this has been replaced by passive aggressiveness, which for me is 1,000 times worse. I would much rather have someone shout in my face that they hate me and they want to fight me than someone say things in my back. It's much more damaging in my opinion. I like confrontation better than that type of stuff. And you can relate that to fitness and YouTube fitness. The vast majority of it is now drama of people talking behind each other's back or making drama videos, but they're never going to meet each other, so it means nothing. It's just a waste of time, and it's negativity that doesn't go anywhere. For me, the best types of conflicts are the ones that you resolve with your fists. And then after that, you feel better. Like you hate the guy, you end up in a scrap. Whoever wins, but most of the time, the animosity that was there is gone. You might even become friends. But that type of resolution never happens if you just chit-chat and just have a clever tongue. Because you never release the valve. The pressure is never released. The animosity just keeps building, and eventually it can lead to an act of violence that is much more severe than a few punches. So we're going to end here. We're going to next week start with page 61. We're still in book 1. So we have a lot to go through, but I really enjoyed this book. I think there's a lot of learn in this book. Shout out to Alexander Burnett for the translation, and I'll see you next time.